So today is arithmetic and properties of real numbers. We're going to start by talking about what happens when we add two real numbers. First off, what happens when we have like signs. And what this means is they're either both positive or they're both negative. And so what we need to do is add the absolute value of the numbers and then use the common sign. So if they're both negative, we'll use a negative. If they're both positive, we'll use a positive. So for example, if we have 5 plus 6, well, that's just 11. They're both positive, our answer is positive. Next up, we have negative 3 plus negative 7. Well, 3 plus 7 is 10. They're both negative, so our 10 is negative also. When they have unlike signs, what this means is one is positive and the other one is negative. And so to do this, we subtract the absolute values and use the sign of the number with the larger absolute value. So for example, if we have negative 3 plus 7, we would do 7 minus 3 is 4. The 7 was positive, so our 4 is positive. Likewise, with 11 plus negative 20, we'll do 20 minus 11 is 9. But notice this 20 was negative, so our 9 is negative. Alright, when we subtract real numbers, the easiest thing to do this is just change it to adding the opposite. You don't always have to do that, but some people find it easier. So for example, if you have 4 minus 9, we can change this to 4 plus a negative 9. And now this is what we were just doing, so 9 minus 4 is 5. Then 9 was negative, so our 5 is negative. And 12 minus negative 13. We can change it to adding the opposite. The opposite of negative 13 is positive 13. And 12 plus 13 is 25. It's the same idea. A helpful idea to remember with these is anytime you have a minus a negative, so let's say you have 6 minus a negative 3, for example. When you add your opposites, these are going to cancel and make it addition. So anytime you have two negatives next to each other, it becomes addition, which would then just become 9. Next up, we have multiplication and division of two real numbers. Two things to keep in mind. Multiplication, you will also see the word product. With division, you may also see the word quotient. And those two words mean the multiplication and division. So same idea, when we have like signs, remember that they're both positive or they're both negative. And in this case, the product's always going to be positive. So when you have 4 times 3, they're both positive. 4 times 3 is 12. Negative 12 divided by negative 12 is going to be a positive 1 because 12 divided by 12 is 1. Alright, now when unlike signs, remember this means one is positive and one is negative. And in this case, the product is always going to be negative. So for example, we have a negative 10 times a positive 5. So we know our answer is going to be negative. And then 10 times 5 is 50. Similarly, we have 24 divided by negative 8. Well, our answer is going to be negative because it's a positive divided by a negative. And 24 divided by 8 is 3. So negative 3. Notice anything times 0 is 0. So when you multiply by 0, the product is 0. But notice over here, you cannot divide by 0. It's undefined. A helpful mnemonic that I've had students teach me is it's okay for 0 to be divided by something, but it's not okay to divide by 0. So if your 0 is in the numerator, that's okay. However, if the 0 is in the denominator, you cannot do that. It's undefined. So now moving on to order of operations. First off, you always want to look at grouping symbols. So we're going to do this example on the right as we go through the order of operations. So first off, let's look grouping symbols. That would be these right here. So 5 minus 7 is negative 2, so we'll simplify that first. So this part is done. Grouping symbols we've taken care of. Now, exponents. We don't have any of those, so we're good for right now. Multiplication and division. Key thing here. Notice you want to go left to right. So in our case, going left to right, we'll have 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. And we still have divided by 6 plus 3. But we still have a division here. So negative 6 divided by positive 6 is negative 1. And then we'll have our plus 3. So our multiplication and division is done. And so then last we've got addition and subtraction. Once again, left to right. So negative 1 plus 3 is 2. So you want to make sure you go left to right on both multiplication and division. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and erase our crossing out so that we can do that again with our next two. So first off, we want to look at grouping symbols. There aren't any, so we don't have to worry about it. Same with exponents, which we'll get to next section. Multiplication and division, left to right. So that means we've got 12 divided by 3 first, which is 4. We still have times 2. And now we still have multiplication and division, so we've got to continue to do that. 4 times 2 is 8. So notice you do want to go left to right. And now we're done. So once again, I'm going to erase these x's for the last one. So notice this fraction bar is now actually being used as a grouping symbol. It's separating your numerator from your denominator. So now we have to worry about the numerator separate from the denominator. However, within our numerator, we also have another set of grouping symbols, 4 minus 6. So we'll have 5 minus 2 times 4 minus 6 is negative 2. No grouping symbols in the denominator, so we will just rewrite it. So grouping symbols done. Once again, no exponents. Multiplication. Now let's look. Going left to right in our numerator, we'll have 5 minus, and then 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. In our denominator, we'll have 2 times 3, so we'll have 9 minus 6. So multiplication and division is done now. Last but not least, we've got addition and subtraction. Notice, however, in our numerator, we have 5 minus a negative 4. We can change that to plus a positive 4. So in our numerator, we'll have 9. In our denominator, we've got 9 minus 6, which is 3. And 9 divided by 3 now is 3. So that's our answer. Alright, next up we've got properties. They are listed in your book. We aren't going to go through all of them here. The main one we're going to go through and talk about is the distributive property, and that's because we will use this one a lot. Notice here this A is getting multiplied to both parts. So we'll have A times B plus A times C. So for this first one, we're going to simplify. So notice this 5 is getting multiplied to both the x and that 7. So 5 times x is just 5x. And then 5 times this negative 7, or minus 5 times 7, is 35. On this second one, even though the negative 3 is on the right, this is still getting distributed to everything. So negative 3 times 2x is negative 6x. negative 3 times 6 is negative 18, or minus 18. And negative 3 times negative 4m is positive 12m. Notice this negative is with that 4, so we can rewrite that as plus a negative 4m to help you see that it's a negative. So that's the distributive property. Now, last but not least, we've got fractions. I know everybody's favorite part about math. First off, when we add or subtract, key thing is getting these common denominators. So for these first two, if we've got a 6 and a 9, our common denominator is going to be 18. You could use 36, or you could even use 54, but you're going to be dealing with larger numbers, and it's best to try to find the smallest number that both of them divide. So now this 5, 6, this negative 5, 6, think about what did you have to multiply the 6 by to get to 18? We had to multiply by 3. So we have to do that to our numerator as well. So we'll get negative 15. On the right side, we had to multiply this 9 by 2, which means we have to multiply the 7 by 2 as well to get to 14. And now that we've got common denominators, we only have to worry about our numerator. So we'll have negative 15 plus 14 is negative 1. On the right over here, notice this 7 is currently not written as a fraction, but we can change that by putting it over 1. Now our common denominator is just going to be 4. Notice the second fraction didn't change anything, so we can rewrite it. However, this one we had to multiply that denominator by 4, so we'll have to multiply the numerator as well. You get to 28 over 4. 28 minus 3 is 25 over 4. If you wanted to change this to a mixed number and get 6 and a fourth, you can. To me, I don't care which one you use. However, I typically tend to leave it as as improper, because it's fewer steps to make a mistake. Alright, when we multiply, you want to multiply your numerators and denominators, but it's in your best interest to divide out common factors along the diagonal first. You'll just have smaller numbers to deal with, make it more manageable. So first off, when we look along this diagonal, we can take a 5 out of both of them. So 25 divided by 5 is 5. Negative 10 divided by 5 is negative 2. Along the other diagonal, we can divide a 3 out from both, so 9 divided by 3 is 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Now nothing else is going to divide out, so we now just multiply across. So negative 8 over 15. Key thing, once everything's divided out that can be, you just multiply across. When we divide, the easy way to do this is change the division to multiplication, and then you do the reciprocal, which just means flip the second fraction. So for example, in this first one, this negative 3 is over 1. So I'll have 45 over 28. Change the division to multiplication. And reciprocal means we're going to flip this second fraction, so it'll be 1 over negative 3. And now we'll use the same techniques we just did on the last page. And along the diagonal, 45 and negative 3, we can divide a 3 out from both. So negative 3 divided by 3 is negative 1. 45 divided by 3 is 15. Now multiply across, we'll get 15 over 28. And you always want to just double check, is there anything else that 15 and 28 will both can be divided by? No, so we're done. However, if you can, you want to keep reducing. This second one, same idea. This first fraction stays. Division becomes multiplication, and you flip the second fraction. And this is all for section 1, 2.